Long before maps could name the land, there stood a quiet village hidden deep within the heart of Africa. Surrounded by towering baobab trees, dense forests, and endless red earth, its people lived simple lives filled with peace and tradition. To outsiders, it looked like an ordinary village, but beneath its calm beauty rested a secret so ancient that only the oldest elders dared to speak of it. Not far from the village flowed a magnificent river. Its crystal-clear waters nourished the farms, filled the clay pots, and gave life to every living creature. During the day, the river was a place of beauty and abundance, but when the sun began to disappear beyond the horizon, no one dared to remain near its banks. For generations, the river had carried a mystery no one could explain. From the time they could walk, every child in the village was taught one sacred rule: never go near the river after sunset. Beneath the great baobab tree, the village elder repeated the warning year after year. Some believed it was merely an old tradition. Others believed something unseen guarded the river after dark. Yet no one dared to challenge the warning, for fear had become part of the village's history. Among the villagers lived a young man, unlike the others. While everyone else accepted the stories without question, his heart was filled with curiosity. Every evening, his eyes wandered toward the distant river. Instead of fear, he felt an irresistible desire to uncover the truth hidden beyond the trees. His mother noticed the change before anyone else. She watched her son stare toward the forest, as though something unseen was calling him. Each passing day, the worry in her heart grew stronger. She feared that the ancient warning, ignored by curiosity, could lead her son down a path from which no one had ever returned. As the days passed, strange things began to happen near the forest surrounding the river. Birds that once filled the air with cheerful songs suddenly flew away before sunset. Even the insects became silent. The deeper one looked into the forest, the more it seemed as though nature itself was holding its breath. The village herbalist spent his days preparing medicines from roots, leaves, and herbs gathered from the forest. Though he spoke very little, his eyes often drifted toward the sacred river. There was a sadness in his expression, as though he carried memories too painful to share. Some secrets, he believed, were safer left buried beneath time. The young man's closest friend soon realized something was different. During their daily work, the young man often fell silent, his attention drawn toward the distant river instead of the tasks before him. Though his friend sensed danger, he could not understand what was pulling his companion toward a place everyone else avoided. Each evening, the village elder sat quietly beneath the ancient baobab tree, his weathered hands resting upon his carved wooden staff. His eyes remained fixed on the distant river, as though remembering a promise made long ago. Deep within his heart, he feared that the past was slowly returning. As night settled over the village, an old wooden canoe drifted silently along the riverbank. It belonged to a fisherman who had disappeared many years before. The canoe had returned alone, untouched and undamaged, but its owner was never seen again. From that day forward, the villagers believed the river never took without a reason, and never returned what it chose to keep. The days passed, yet the young man could not forget the river. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the water seemed to come alive. Gentle ripples danced across its surface without the touch of wind, and strange whispers floated through the air. Though no words could be understood, the sound was enough to stir something deep within his soul. That night, sleep abandoned him once again. Every time he closed his eyes, he found himself standing beside the sacred river beneath a full moon. A glowing figure waited silently on the water, reaching toward him without speaking. He awoke before dawn, his heart racing, unable to shake the feeling that the dream was more than just a dream. Before the village awoke, the village elder met quietly with the herbalist beneath the ancient baobab tree. Neither spoke for a long while. They simply watched the distant river, as though expecting something to happen. At last, the herbalist whispered that the signs had returned. The elder lowered his head, knowing the peace they had enjoyed for generations might soon come to an end. Later that day, while gathering firewood near the forest, the young man and his friend stumbled upon something impossible. A trail of glowing footprints stretched across the earth toward the river. They were unlike the footprints of any human or animal. As they watched, the glowing marks slowly faded into the ground, leaving behind only silence. That evening, the elder summoned every villager beneath the great baobab tree. His voice trembled as he reminded them never to approach the sacred river after sunset. Many wondered why the warning had suddenly become so urgent, but the elder offered no explanation. Some truths, he believed, were too dangerous to speak aloud. Unable to silence his curiosity, the young man wandered deeper into the forest than ever before. Hidden beneath tangled vines and fallen branches, he discovered an old footpath, almost completely swallowed by nature. It seemed untouched for countless years, as though time itself had forgotten it existed. Yet something urged him to follow it. He stood at the entrance of the forgotten path for what felt like an eternity. Every warning he had ever heard echoed in his mind. But another voice, quieter yet stronger, urged him forward. Taking a deep breath, he tightened his grip on his walking stick and stepped into the unknown. The deeper he walked, the stranger the forest became. The singing birds had disappeared. Even the insects had fallen silent. Only the sound of his own footsteps remained. It was as though the entire forest was watching him, waiting to see what he would do next. At last, he reached the river just as the final light of the day disappeared. Thick blue mist slowly rose from the water, curling across its surface like living smoke. The once peaceful river no longer looked familiar. It seemed to breathe, as though awakening from a very long sleep. Then it happened. From the glowing mist, a graceful woman slowly emerged, standing effortlessly upon the surface of the river. Her flowing white garments shimmered beneath the moonlight, and her eyes glowed like the deepest waters. She was neither frightening nor cruel. She carried an ancient beauty that seemed untouched by time itself. Hidden behind a giant tree, the young man could do nothing but stare in complete amazement. Before he could gather the courage to move, the mysterious woman slowly turned toward the moonlit sky. Without a single word, her glowing form dissolved into countless droplets of blue light, disappearing into the mist as though she had never been there. The river became silent once again, but deep within his heart, the young man knew his life had changed forever. Unable to resist, the young man stepped closer to the riverbank. As he knelt beside the water, he noticed an ancient symbol carved into a smooth stone. Moments earlier, it had been glowing with a faint blue light, but the instant his fingers touched it, the glow disappeared. Confused, he stared at the strange markings, unaware that he had awakened something far older than himself. The moon climbed higher as he hurried back through the forest. Every step felt heavier than the last. Suddenly, he sensed he was no longer alone. Between the trees, dozens of glowing eyes watched him in complete silence. Whenever he turned to look directly at them, they vanished into the darkness. The forest had become a place where even the shadows seemed alive. Before the first rooster crowed, the young man slipped quietly back into the village. His mother sat beside a dying fire, waiting without a word. She looked into his eyes and immediately knew he had gone where no one should ever go. Though she asked no questions, her worried silence spoke louder than any warning. Morning arrived, but something about the river had changed. The once crystal waters now reflected a strange darkness beneath their surface. Fishermen refused to cast their nets, and women fetching water whispered nervously among themselves. Even the animals hesitated before approaching the river. The village could feel that something unseen had begun to stir. As the young man walked through the village, the herbalist watched him carefully. He noticed the faint blue glow hidden deep within the young man's eyes, a sign that had not appeared for generations. Without speaking, the old healer understood that the river had chosen someone once again. That evening, the young man returned to the river. Following the strange symbol he had discovered, he found a narrow opening concealed behind thick vines. It led into an ancient cave, hidden beside the sacred waters. Cold air drifted from its entrance, carrying the scent of damp earth and forgotten history. Every instinct told him to leave, but curiosity pulled him forward. Inside the cave, the walls were covered with ancient paintings, unlike anything he had ever seen. They showed villagers standing peacefully beside the river, while a radiant woman rose from the water, blessing the land. The young man realized the mysterious figure he had seen was not a creature of fear. She had once been honored and respected by the people. Elsewhere in the village, the elder and the herbalist met beneath the old baobab tree once again. The elder finally admitted what he had hidden for decades. The river spirit had never cursed the village. She had protected it. But after one terrible act of greed by their ancestors, the truth was buried, and fear replaced gratitude. Since then, every generation had lived with only half the story. As the young man stood quietly beside the river that night, the calm water suddenly rippled. Beneath the surface, a gigantic shadow slowly moved through the darkness. It was far larger than any crocodile or fish. Though he could not see its full shape, he felt its presence. Whatever lay beneath the river was ancient, and it had begun to awaken. Sleep became impossible. Long after midnight, the young man stepped outside his hut and looked toward the distant river. A faint blue glow shimmered between the trees, almost as if the river itself were calling his name. This time, he did not hesitate. He knew the answers he sought could only be found where the mystery had first begun. The river spirit slowly raised her hand. She spoke no words, yet glowing streams of blue light appeared between them. Ancient symbols floated through the air, carrying memories from a time long before the village existed. In that moment, the young man understood that some truths could be seen, even when they could not be spoken. The glowing symbols transformed into a vision of the distant past. The young man saw the first villagers gathered beside the river, offering fruits, grains, flowers, and songs of gratitude. The river spirit blessed the waters, and the land flourished with life. The river had never belonged to the people. Instead, the people had been entrusted to care for it. The vision suddenly changed. One night, driven by greed, a villager secretly stole a sacred object buried beneath the riverbank, believing it would bring him wealth and power. The moment the object was disturbed, the earth trembled, the waters darkened, and the ancient covenant between the village and the river spirit was broken. The young man watched in horror as another vision unfolded. Deep beneath the sacred river lay an enormous shadow imprisoned beneath glowing ancient stones. It struggled against invisible chains while the river spirit used every ounce of her strength to keep the prison sealed. For generations she had stood alone, protecting the village from a danger no one remembered. Before sunrise, the young man sought out the village elder and the herbalist. Seeing the truth in his eyes, the elder knew the river spirit had revealed the forgotten history. With a heavy heart, he confessed everything. The stories passed down through generations had become twisted by fear. The villagers had forgotten that the spirit was their guardian, not their enemy. As the morning sun rose, terrified cries echoed across the village. The once peaceful river churned violently, sending powerful waves crashing against its banks. The ground trembled beneath everyone's feet, and birds scattered into the sky. The ancient seal was beginning to fail. Far beneath the river, glowing stones that had remained unbroken for centuries began to crack apart. Through the widening gaps, two enormous glowing eyes slowly opened in the darkness. The imprisoned force had awakened, and with every passing moment, its power grew stronger. That night, the river spirit appeared once more before the young man. She gently placed her glowing hand upon his forehead. A brilliant blue symbol appeared, shining like moonlight upon water. At that instant, he understood his purpose. He had not been chosen to conquer the river. He had been chosen to protect the promise that bound the village to it. As dawn approached, dark clouds gathered over the village, and the sacred river roared louder than ever before. The elder, the herbalist, and the young guardian knew they had very little time left. If the ancient covenant was not restored before the next sunrise, the darkness beneath the river would finally break free, and nothing would be able to stop it. Before the first light of dawn, the sacred river erupted with unimaginable fury. Towering waves crashed against its banks as the earth trembled beneath the villagers' feet. A thick cloud of black mist rose from the water while the river spirit struggled to hold it back. For the first time, the entire village witnessed the battle that had remained hidden for centuries. The village elder stepped forward, leaning on his carved staff as silence fell over the frightened crowd. With tears in his eyes, he revealed the truth their ancestors had failed to preserve. The river spirit, had never been the enemy. For generations she had stood guard over an ancient darkness imprisoned beneath the river, protecting the village at great cost. Panic spread through the village like wildfire. Some people begged to flee before it was too late. Others blamed the river spirit for every misfortune they had ever suffered. Fear clouded their judgment, and the village stood on the edge of turning against the very guardian who had protected them all along. The young guardian walked alone to the river's edge and faced the river spirit once more. Looking into her eyes, he finally understood what she had been trying to reveal from the very beginning. This was never a battle to be won with weapons. It was a promise that had to be remembered, honored, and restored. Guided by the village elder and the herbalist, the villagers gathered beside the sacred river with humble hearts. They cleaned the riverbanks, returned what had once been taken from the sacred ground, and offered gifts of gratitude just as their ancestors had done long ago. As the ancient covenant was renewed, the river began to glow with a peaceful blue light once again. Suddenly, the imprisoned darkness made one last desperate attempt to escape. The river shook violently as a gigantic shadow rose beneath the water. Standing side by side, the young guardian and the river spirit held their ground. United by courage, wisdom, and the renewed covenant, they faced the ancient force together. As the first rays of sunlight touched the river, the sacred promise reached its full strength. Brilliant blue light spread across the water, rounding the ancient darkness until it slowly dissolved back into the depths. The storm vanished, the earth grew still, and peace returned with the rising sun. The river spirit turned toward the young guardian with a gentle smile filled with gratitude. Her glowing form slowly became one with the flowing river, leaving behind only sparkling drops of light dancing upon the water. Though unseen, her presence would forever remain, watching over the river she had sworn to protect. Days passed, and life returned to the village. Children laughed beside the river during the daylight, birds filled the forest with song once more, and the waters flowed as clear as crystal. No longer ruled by fear, the villagers honored the river with respect, remembering the sacrifice that had preserved their home. Years later, beneath the shade of the ancient baobab tree, the village elder shared the story with a new generation of children. Nearby, the young guardian stood quietly beside the peaceful river, grateful that the truth would never again be forgotten. And from that day forward, the legend of the river spirit was remembered not as a tale of fear, but as a timeless reminder that nature protects those who choose to protect it. If you enjoyed this tale of the river spirit and love captivating African folk tales filled with mystery, wisdom, and unforgettable lessons, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Ardent Epic Folktales channel on YouTube. Until next time, keep the spirit of African storytelling alive.